You're watching WTVJ NBC in South Florida.
Following immediately are the news, weather, sports, and the full-length musical The Singing Marine, co-starring Dick Powell, Doris Weston, and Alan Jenkins.
Luby Chevrolet, making news wherever cars are sold. In Boston, New York, Baltimore, and Miami presents Ralph Renick and the 11 o'clock news.
The Senate tonight has passed the right to vote measure in the Civil Rights Bill. From left to right, Senators Russell and Mahoney, who voted against the bill, and Senators Johnson, Noland, and Anderson, who supported the measure.
And now, Ralph Renick reports the news.
And talk about chances. Orson Welles had nothing.
WTVJ Miami, South Florida's largest daily circulation. The Ralph Renick Report with Bob Mayer, Harry K. Smith in Fort Lauderdale, and Bob Gallagher. Now here's Ralph Renick.
Good evening, everybody.
WTVJ Miami, South Florida's largest daily circulation. The Ralph Renick Report.
The Renick Report continued as the most watched news program in South Florida. Renick used the 70s to redefine.
WTVJ Miami, South Florida's largest average daily circulation. The Ralph Renick Report may be heard in Spanish with Manolo Reyes translating on WOCN 1450 on your radio dial. The Ralph Renick Report with Gordon Stevens.
Space frame on TV, okay, all that.
Good evening, everybody.
Once the show is actually on the...
Your vote is your voice. Use it and be heard.
News Weekend, Update 3. Channel 4's continuing story of news this weekend.
Good evening, I'm Bob Mayer. Coming up in the news tonight, former President Nixon is removed from the critical list. A Miami policeman rescues a woman from a burning building, and Coconut Grove went the bikeway today.
Hi, I'm Tony Segreto, and in sports, Miami exploded today by beating Atlanta 42-7, and Buffalo beat New England by 1.
Hi, I'm Don Carson. Lots of sunshine around today, also a few showers. We'll talk more about that along with a complete state and national weather summary coming up later.
Former President Richard Nixon was removed from the critical list today at Long Beach Memorial Hospital. His personal physician said Mr. Nixon sat up today for the first time since he suffered shock and internal bleeding after Tuesday's phlebitis surgery. The American coal industry appears headed for a crippling strike. Contract talks between industry officials and the United Mine Workers bogged down today in Washington. The present contract expires November 12th.
One in viewer ratings ever since. In fact, all of Channel 4's news programs are #1 in ratings. The News at Noon with Del Frank, The World Tonight with Jim Brosmer, and News Weekend with this reporter.
News Weekend, Update 4. Channel 4's continuing story of news this weekend.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bob Mayer. In case you've missed it, this is July 4th, 1976, and our country has been celebrating its birthday all day. We'll have a complete wrap-up of local and national events surrounding the bicentennial, as well as late-breaking news coming up.
Hi, I'm Tony Segreto. I'm glad you told me it was the 4th of July, Bob. Kerry Yarborough won the Firecracker 400 at Daytona, plus we'll take a sports bicentennial look.
Hello, I'm Don Carson, and we have had some outstanding weather all day long today. Lots of people have outdoor activities planned tomorrow, and we'll take a look at that forecast a bit later.
The nation's bicentennial holiday is down to its last hour, and it has been a day of splendor, pageantry, and pride. One of the highlights...
News Weekend, Update 3. Now here's Bob Mayer.
Once the program is on the air, the major responsibilities shift to the...
Ralph Renick Report. Now here's Bob Mayer.
Good evening, everybody. 9 members of the Zion Coptic Church were found guilty within the hour after a marathon marijuana conspiracy trial in Miami Federal Court. Elliot Rodriguez has a live eye report now from the federal courthouse. Elliot?
The World Tonight. Now here's Jim Brosmer.
Good evening. At least 33 elderly and mentally retarded residents of a New Jersey nursing home are dead, 8 are injured, and 13 are still missing after a fire swept through the building before daybreak. Reed Collins reports.
News Weekend, Update 2. Now here's Bob Mayer.
Good evening. Tropical Storm Floyd has whipped itself up into the third hurricane of the season and now poses a potential threat to the Bahamas. Rich Warren is here with an update.
News Weekend, Update 4. Now here's Bob Mayer.
Good evening. With a curfew now in effect, the only persons on the streets of Miami's riot-torn areas are police, National Guardsmen, and numerous snipers, looters, and torchmen setting dozens of fires that are now burning out of control. Some persons in the affected areas have had enough, and as C.T. Taylor reports, they are beginning to arm themselves to protect their lives and property.
News Weekend, Update 2. Now here's Bob Mayer.
Good evening, everybody. Police SWAT teams have converged on a house in Davie where a man who has already shot at least one person is holding several others hostage. Channel 4's Jim Dyer is on the scene with this live-eye report.
The World Tonight. Now here's Jim Brosmer.
Good evening, everybody. The Overtown section of Miami is hopefully quieting down at this hour following a civil disturbance.
News Weekend, Update 3. Now here's Jim Dyer.
Good evening. A number of prayer services were held today throughout South Florida commemorating Memorial Day.
The World Tonight. Now here's Jim Brosmer.
Good evening, everybody. 29 Haitians who tried for freedom in the United States are in custody tonight at the Chrome Avenue Detention Center.
News Weekend, Update 4. Now here's Bob Mayer.
Good evening, everybody. Miami's Latin community is tense but quiet tonight in the wake of 9 hours of disturbances yesterday that resulted in the arrest of 34 protesters. The violence, spurred by the deportation of a Cuban stowaway on Friday, prompted an emergency session of the Miami Commission. Pam Salisbury has a report.
The Newlywed Game tomorrow at 5 here on Channel 4. Ralph Renick. Bob Weaver's weather. And Tony Segreto with sports. This is News 4.
Good evening. A 17-month-old baby is alive tonight thanks to quick action by a Metro-Dade police officer.
Ralph Renick. Bob Weaver's weather. And Tony Segreto with sports. This is News 4.
Good evening. On a night when it's great just to sit inside and let the weather go by. But some people are not able to do that. They're too busy holding back the water that's been crashing on Florida's East Coast all day.
Jim Dyer. And Salisbury. This is News 4.
Good evening.
Steve Rondinero. Pam Salisbury. Bill Van Dusen's weather. And Mark Goldberg with sports. This is News 4.
Good evening.
Ralph Renick. Bob Weaver's weather. And Tony Segreto with sports. This is News 4.
Good evening. On a night when it's great just to sit inside and let the weather go by. But some
WTVJ Channel 4, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. This is News 4 with Pam Salisbury, Steve Rondinero, Bill Van Dusen's weather, and Ned Smith with sports. This is a News 4 update.
Good evening. An American kidnapped in Beirut has paid the price for the U.S. airstrike on Libya. He paid with his life. Thousands of Libyans poured into the streets of Tripoli today to mourn their countrymen killed in that American attack. A U.S. Titan rocket went up in flames today just seconds after launch. It was believed to be carrying a secret spy satellite. Smooth riding today for Metro Mover on its first full day of service with everyone riding for free. Join us for News 4 at 11.
You're watching Channel 4, WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. Now, Anna Asqui, Jim Brosmer, Weaver the Weatherman, and Tony Segreto with sports. This is News 4.
Good afternoon. Jim Brosmer is off tonight.
I'm Gordon Stevens.
You're watching Channel 4, WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. Now, Anna Asqui, Gordon Stevens, Dick Fennell's weather, and Alan Mendelson. This is News 4. You're watching Channel 4, WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. Now, John Hambrick, Susan Lickman, Weaver the Weatherman, and Tony Segreto with sports. This is News 4.
Good evening. It has been another dark day on Wall Street where the stock market suffered its second biggest loss in history.
Live from the heart of South Florida, this is News 4 Today.
Good morning, South Florida. It's 55 degrees in Miami, 55 in Fort Lauderdale, too. In the news this morning, South Florida is shivering as temperatures drop to their...
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Live from the heart of South Florida, this is News 4 at noon.
Good afternoon, everybody.
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Live from the heart of South Florida, this is News 4 at 5:30 with Susan Lickman, Anna Asqui, Cliff Morrison with weather, and sports with Tony Segreto.
Good evening, I'm Susan Lickman.
And I'm John Hambrick. Anna Asqui has the night off.
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Live from the heart of South Florida, this is News 4 at 6 with John Hambrick, Susan Lickman, Cliff Morrison with weather, and Tony Segreto with sports.
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
From the heart of South Florida, this is News 4 at 6.
Good evening. Sickening scenes of animal abuse greeted investigators visiting a West Dade ranch today.
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Live from the heart of South Florida, this is News 4 Nightcast.
Good evening. Hurricane Joan has changed her name, but not her ways. Now,
J, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Live from the heart of South Florida, this is News 4 Nightcast.
The Canes came out smoking in more ways than one at the Orange Bowl tonight, even though they knew they had virtually no shot at number one, not after Notre Dame shellacking with West Virginia in the Fiesta Bowl. Good evening.
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Pam Salisbury. Bob Weaver, weather. Tony Segreto, sports. Good morning. This is Today in South Florida.
WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Pam Salisbury. Anna Asqui. Bob Weaver, weather. This is the Channel 4 News, #1 at noon.
Good afternoon. What a way to begin the new decade. Our own University of Miami Hurricanes have now been voted the #1 college team in the nation.
Good afternoon, South Florida. It's 4:30.
On today's program, is your love on the rocks? If the sparkle's gone out of your marriage, are you wondering if you married the wrong person? Is divorce the only remedy now that the honeymoon is over?
And the 7th annual Miami Film Festival kicks off tonight. It's what's hot this week.
Plus, a first look at news and weather. This is South Florida at 4:30.
Hello, I'm Ed O'Dell.
And I'm Anna Asqui.
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Steve Abrams. Susan Lichtman. Cliff Morrison, weather. Jack Atherton, troubleshooter. Yolanda Gaskins, entertainment. This is the Channel 4 News. First look at 5.
Good evening, and you can make it #1 times 3. For the 3rd time in the past 7 years, the University of Miami Hurricanes are the national champions of college football.
Live from Fort Lauderdale and Miami. This is Channel 4 News at 5:30 with Steve Abrams in Fort Lauderdale, Teresa Rodriguez in Miami, Brian Norcross, weather, Tony Segreto, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
Good evening from Miami.
And good evening from Fort Lauderdale. Let's take a look at some of the top stories in the Channel 4 News at this hour.
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
This is Channel 4 News at 6 with Kelly Craig, Tom Randalls, Brian Norcross, weather, Tony Segreto, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
Good evening. The verbal volley is over, at least for now. Lipton Tennis scoring a big victory today on Key Biscayne.
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Susan Lichtman. Steve Abrams. Cliff Morrison, weather. Tony Segreto, sports. Bob Mayer, business. This is the Channel 4 News, South Florida's big news.
Good evening. The Hurricanes are champions again, capping a dynamite decade of football.
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Susan Lichtman. Steve Abrams. Cliff Morrison, weather. Tony Segreto, sports. Yolanda Gaskins, entertainment. This is the Channel 4 News Nightcast.
This is WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Jose Diaz-Balart. Jerry Helfman. Ned Smith, sports. This is the Channel 4 News Nightcast.
WTVJ, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Susan Lichtman. Steve Abrams. Cliff Morrison, weather. Tony Segreto, sports. Bob Mayer, business. This is the Channel 4 News, South Florida's big news.
Good evening. The battle intensifies tonight in Panama, not for the streets, but for General Manuel Noriega.
From your 24-hour news source, this is Today in South Florida with Marianne Murciano, Bob Mayer, Bob Weaver, weather, Tony Segreto, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
Watch our teamwork, Channel 4 News.
This is Channel Channel 4 News at 5 with Bob Mayer, Kelly Craig, meteorologist Brian Norcross in the Storm Center, and the Channel 4 News team.
Good evening, everybody. A daring daylight bank robbery ending with a dangerous struggle as police run down a man disguised in a purple dress.
Watch our teamwork, Channel 4 News.
From your 24-hour news source, this is Channel 4 News at 6 with Kelly Craig, Tom Randalls, meteorologist Brian Norcross, weather, Tony Segreto, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
Good evening. A South Florida broadcasting legend, the man who anchored the news from this very studio for 35 years, is dead. Ralph Renick died overnight at Cedars Medical Center after complications from hepatitis and liver failure. He was 62.
Watch our teamwork, Channel 4 News.
This is the Channel 4 News Nightcast, #1 at 11, with Tom Randalls, Susan Lichtman, meteorologist Brian Norcross, weather, Tony Segreto, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
Watch our teamwork, Channel 4 News.
This is Channel 4 News at 11, with Jose Diaz-Balart, Jerry Helfman, Brian Allen, weather, Ned Smith, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
Good evening.
Watch our teamwork, Channel 4 News.
From your 24-hour news source, this is Channel 4 News at 6 with Kelly Craig, Tom Randalls, meteorologist Brian Norcross, weather, Tony Segreto, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
It's a real waste. It's sad when you lose somebody that's, got so many great things in his life to look forward to and such great potential.
From Fort Lauderdale and Miami, this is Channel 4 News at 5:30 with Steve Abrams in Fort Lauderdale, Teresa Rodriguez in Miami, meteorologist Brian Norcross in the Storm Center, Tony Segreto, sports, and the Channel 4 News team.
Good evening from Fort Lauderdale.
And good evening from Miami. I'm Ed Odell, sitting in for Teresa Rodriguez, who's filling in on NBC News at sunrise all this week.
Looking at the top stories in this half hour of the Channel 4 News, Congress and President Bush square off on civil rights. We'll have a live report.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Bob Mayer. Welcome to Live at 11. We have everything you ever wanted to know about tickets for the Florida Marlins baseball team because you're going to be asking the questions.
I'm Jerry Helfman, and we're going to see a piece of jewelry created right before our eyes.
We have a...
Stay with us. Channel 4 News. Bob Mayer. Alicia Ortega. Bob Weaver. Live. This is Today in South Florida. Stay with us. Channel 4 News. Willard Shepard. Jerry Helfman. Brian Allen. Jerry Ross. Live. This is Channel 4 News at 6. Stay with us. Channel 4 News. Tony Segreto. Michelle Gillen. Brian Norcross. Live. This is the Channel 4 News Nightcast.
It was called the Hurricane Andrew story, Hollywood version of what you lived through, all told, in 2 hours.
But thousands here in South Florida are still coping with the reality of what the storm left behind.
9 months after Andrew, the work to rebuild continues.
Stay with us. Channel 4 News. Jerry Helfman. Ed Odell. Brian Allen. Jerry Ross. Live. This is the Channel 4 News Nightcast.
They lived in a cult compound with a man who called himself God. They were accused of murdering 4 federal agents in a bloody shootout. Tonight, the verdict is in, the final chapter in a long and deadly string of events. Good evening. The verdict is not guilty for the 11 cult members.
You're watching WTVJ NBC, where the news comes first. Kelly Craig, Jose Diaz-Balart, Ryan Norcross. This is Channel 4 News at 4:30. You're watching WTVJ NBC, where the news comes first. This is Channel 4 News at 11. Would you like to mail?
Time is now. We're just 2 hours and counting until history hits South Florida. Channel 4 is moving up and making the switch to Channel 6. Good evening, I'm Jerry Helfman.
And I'm Willard Shepard. Thanks for being with us tonight. We're about to become the new NBC6. It's history in the making, and we want you to be part of it. It all happens at 1 a.m., and it's all very simple. Just move with us 2 places up the dial to Channel 6.
Stay with us. Channel 4 News. Tony Segreto. Michelle Gillen. Brian Norcross. Live. This is the Channel 4 News Nightcast.
What became a figure skating soap opera ends with drama and high emotion. Tanya Harding breaks down on the ice, where she returns looking tougher than ever. Nancy Kerrigan skates with the glitter of gold, but she can overtake a Ukrainian teenager who fought pain to place #1 in the world. Good evening, everyone. Nancy Kerrigan performed nearly perfectly, but not perfect enough to win the gold.
You're watching WTVJ NBC6, where the news comes first. This is Today in South Florida.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jill Beach. It is 7 o'clock Sunday, September 10th, 1995. Welcome to Today in South Florida, now on NBC6.
You're watching WTVJ NBC6, where the news comes first. This is Channel 6 News at noon. You're watching WTVJ NBC6, where the news comes first. This is Channel 6 News at 11.
This fire has already burned more than 2,000 acres of the Everglades. This fire torched dozens of acres and shut down US 1 for hours. More proof, 1996 is a big year for wildfires. Good evening, I'm Jose Diaz-Balart. Tony Segreto is off tonight.
And I'm Jennifer Valapi.
You're watching WTVJ NBC6, where the news comes first. This is Channel 6 News.
Good evening, I'm Will.
You're watching WTVJ NBC6, where the news comes first. This is Channel 6 News at noon.
Remember this fight, the flame.
You're watching WTVJ NBC6, where the news comes first.
Fight for this series.
With more than 50 years experience serving South Florida, this is WTVJ NBC6 News.
You're watching WTVJ NBC6.
Long lines, short tempers. Things are getting worse tonight as one of America's biggest airlines grinds to a near halt, stranding hundreds of passengers. Good evening.
This is NBC6 News at 11.
Good evening.
WTVJ, Florida's first television station, live from our studios in Miramar and at the American Airlines Arena in downtown Miami. This is NBC6 News.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a night of broadcasting history for WTVJ NBC6. A big night for NBC6 as WTVJ continues its tradition of excellence in serving you in South Florida.
Tonight, you may notice that we're in a different place. We are broadcasting live from our new studios in downtown Miami at the American Airlines Arena.
NBC6 News at 6 starts right now.
It's the first major hurricane of the season. Hurricane Fabian, now a Category 3 storm, is gaining strength and speed out in the Atlantic. Good evening to you. I'm Willard Shepard.
This is NBC6 News at 11.
Tonight, the search intensifies for a serial rapist stalking a South Florida community. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jackie Nespro.
And I'm Martha Sagowski. Tony has the night off. Police are trying a new tactic tonight to track down this rapist who's now even attacking children.
This is NBC6 News at 5.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tony Segretto.
And I'm Julia Yarbo. Jackie Nespro has...
NBC6 News at 6 starts right now.
From South Florida's news leader, this is NBC6 Today in South Florida. From South Florida's news leader, this is NBC6 Today in South Florida. This is the NBC6 News at 6. This is NBC6 South Florida Tonight. From South Florida's news leader, this is Today in South Florida on NBC6 HD.
Yeah, we look outside and it's still dark out there.
It
and by
is.
the way, things are going to change.
When the sun comes up?
No, no, of course. But the time that the sun comes up and down.
Forward on
Yes,
Saturday.
That's right.
Yeah. So
officially Sunday morning at 2 a.m.
So 6 o'clock
Sunday
morning, it's going to be really dark because sun's not going to come up for an hour later.
Right. So we'll say 6 o'clock, but it'll feel like 5 a.m.
It's actually 2 minutes after 6 o'clock today, Thursday. Good morning. I'm Bob Mayer.
I'm Pam Gigante. Let's get you right on over to meteorologist Jennifer Gray filling in for Ryan Phillips this morning.
Live, this is the news at 6 on NBC6 HD. You're watching NBC6, South Florida's only high-definition news. And now, NBC6 South Florida Nightly News. Live, this is South Florida Tonight on NBC6 HD.
Good evening, everyone.
Live, this is Today in South Florida on NBC6 HD. Live, this is NBC Miami Today.
Good morning, everyone. It's Saturday, March 3rd, 2012. I'm Sharon Lawson alongside meteorologist Jennifer Reeves. Hello to you, Jen.
Good morning.
Live, this is NBC6 News at 11. Live, this is NBC Miami at 5.
Now.
Live, this is South Florida Nightly News on NBC6 HD. Live, this is the non-stop news at 9.
Good evening to you, and thank you for joining us. I'm Amra Sohn. Welcome to the Nonstop News at 9. Every night we are giving you the top 9 stories happening in your world right off the top.
Live, NBC6 South Florida Today starts now.
And good morning to you. I'm Pam Gigante.
And I'm Dewan Serta. Good Monday morning to you out there.
Live, the news on NBC6 South Florida starts now.
Our top story tonight, a local teacher leaves the Broward jail in tears. He was arrested yesterday and charged with physically abusing one of his special...
Live, the news on NBC6 starts now.
Good Monday morning to you. I'm Shelley Minos.
And I'm Eric Harriman. Your time right now is...
Live, the news on NBC 6 at 6 starts now.
We begin with breaking news right now. Sources saying Miami-Dade Public School Superintendent Alberto Carvalho will be leaving South Florida and heading to New York.
NBC6 anchor Trina Robinson joins us.
Live, the news on NBC6 at 11 starts now.
Breaking this midday out of Coral Springs, a dangerous drop sends a firefighter to the hospital. Police say the officer fell more than 40 feet during a training exercise at the Coral Springs Fire Academy, and that officer was rushed to Broward Health North and in critical condition. This is
live. The news on NBC6 starts now.
A high school student under arrest tonight accused of threatening to kill a classmate. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Tawan Strader.
And I'm Trina Robinson in for Jackie. Police.
This is Channel 4, WTVJ Miami.
Girls on Channel 4. So be happy.
You're watching NBC6.
First alert traffic with Kelly Blanco. Weekday mornings beginning at 5 a.m.